Depending on how you define it, there are many different ways that parody can be approached.
This has become a lot more apparent as the overabundance of media has made even some of the most general publics aware of even some of the most niche genres and tropes. Case in point, anime, and more specifically for our purposes, the magical girl genre. This isn't too surprising, as after the shonen genre has been spoofed to death, many creators who grew up watching classic magical girl anime tried to bring that same energy into their own works, resulting in affectionate parodies.
But that's just so old and a cliche that only kids watch it.
I wanted that part, but it was dubbed in Canada.
And like a lot of things in life really, depending on how you approach it, you can end up with something really good, maybe even on par with the original, or just another cheap knockoff.
Ignoring how one, many of the things they're criticizing was never really a thing in magical girl anime, and two, one of the shows they're parodying was already a deconstruction and did it much better. Speaking of which, Kill la Kill, much like Gurren Lagann for the super robot genre, has been seen as a deconstruction that became a reconstruction by the end of its run, as the magical girl tropes it had spoofed were ultimately still done with fun gusto, and even became the keys to resolving the main conflict of their story, thus showing that while at the core you can still tell a bit of a more traditional magical girl story, you also shouldn't restrict yourself from throwing at least a few satirical jabs in at the genre, as it has been around long enough that it does deserve at least a little feedback.
Precure has not only embraced this idea, but has even kind of run with it with a couple of their own shows.
While I wouldn't necessarily say the more satirical elements objectively made or broke either Smile or Tropical Rouge, they certainly gave both shows their own unique flavor, which I personally loved, as it at least made them different, and did show that the creators do genuinely care about this franchise. It also helps that Toei has done these sort of in-house parodies many times over for their tokusatsu, even also dedicating whole shows around them. As a result, they even permit some third-party parodies that could fall under copyright infringement, but I think they just appreciate the free advertising.
Why they don't have that same energy for slightly critical reviews of their product, I don't know, but that's beside the point.
The point is that because of Toei's selective good sportsmanship, we have gotten some pretty extra affectionate parodies of Precure. Hell, originally this video was going to focus on all of them, but we decided to just focus on this one. Don't worry, Flower Princess Blaze will have its day soon. But
first, why don't we take a look at one of the best Precure parodies from one of the most unlikely of sources.
The Way of the House Husband is a satirical comedy about the Yakuza, with the main character Tatsu being a former member trying to live a normal house husband life with his wife Miku. It's a pretty fun little slice of life, with Tats constantly struggling between his old and new life, where he also tries to be an Instagram blogger.
Didn't think anyone could out-boomer Kazuma Kiryu, but there you go.
But yeah, it's a fun series that got a good live-action adaptation, and decent anime on Netflix, in my opinion at least. I mean, I understand a lot of people not caring for how the producers forced the animators to make essentially a motion comic, but I still found it a fun time. Though apparently even the director, Chiaki Kon, hated this decision, so much so that I think she decided to just put her all into some side content that she was far more passionate about. Enter Crimecatch Policure, which yeah, try to guess what that first part is referencing. It's a show within the show, being Miku's favorite anime, to the point that she regularly collects all the figures and Blu-rays, which I can tell you is not a cheap investment. The joke of course being that not only did Tots have to constantly help her indulge in her geeky little hobby, looking the way he does, but it's also clearly a cop-themed superheroine show where they fight a supervillain Yakuza group. It's kind of heartwarming, but also damn hilarious that he's supporting what's likely a police propaganda show. Regardless, Miku was a giant weeb for it, to the point that she could go into some familiar-looking, long-ass diatribes about how great it was.
A little ironic, considering that her VA, Shizuka Ito, did play a significant character in the title they're referencing, and also an antagonist from the show that came out the same year as this one. Tatsu, meanwhile, just played a DILF, I think.
Still, considering just how vaguely familiar what Miku said here looked, you'd almost think that the manga, Kosuke Ono, was a big Precure fan, to the point that he'd come up with some rough concepts and even gave Kon the okay to do some original stuff.
Yeah, about that.
During the first season of Way of the House Husband, they actually made a full-on opening theme that was dangerously close to the actual OG's opening theme melody, but just replaced the lyrics with a lot more police and Yakuza slang. Though, even more interestingly, it was sung by Kon herself. And while I'm not going to say she's like the second coming of Shoko Nakagawa and is clearly using a lot of autotune, I do have to admit she did a pretty admirable job here. Though maybe it shouldn't be that much of a surprise, as she has outright admitted to be a big fan of this franchise when she did an interview for the Happiness Charge movie she directed.
From there, they just took the next logical step and kind of upstaged the current season. Not a difficult task, mind you.
As part of the advertisement for Way of the Husband Season 2, they made a full-on opening animation with Kon bringing in freaking Kosuke Yoshida to animate it. Yeah, we've mentioned it previously in the Symphogear XV review and the Gold Princess review. Yes, he is an actual Policure animator and has worked with Kon on the aforementioned Happiness Charge film, hence why he was likely called in. And needless to say, this clearly has a lot more frames than the show proper, as well as a plethora of references to many actual Policure openings, including a bit involving a chase with simpler yet stylized animation, again more than what poor Tatsu is afforded, and a panning up reveal of the antagonist, including a hot-headed rival character and a very curvy dummy mommy.
Which, come on, we all know that Policure would never be overly fanservice-y. Oh wait. Well, they would certainly never have a dominatrix, so wait. Well, it would never be too fetishy. Oh, come on!
Still, for something that I remind you was only supposed to be for a show within a show, in other words, not real, they went far and above, as other than them using a magical Mile 27 at the end, you could have fooled me into thinking this was the opening to Hirogaru Sky. Hell, the pink lead is coincidentally called Sky Police. Now, you could say this is kind of false advertising for Way of the House Husband, but who's to say they can't do a full-on spin-off of this, considering they've already done much of the legwork, including getting one of the most important credits they needed. Yeah, remember when I said Toei kind of silently allowed parodies of this franchise to be made? Well, for this, they took it a step further and just outright gave them legal approval. Yeah, while they likely had nothing to do with the actual production of this animation, the very fact that Toei Animation is listed as special thanks says that they at least gave Ono their blessing to do whatever he wanted with this little KO.
And funny thing is, that credit didn't really originate in the anime, but rather in this manga.
For the release of the 8th volume of The Way of the House Husband's Tankobon, they included a limited edition that packaged it with a one-shot mini-comic that acted like a full-on extended chapter of Crimecatch Policure, like something the Kamikita Futago would write for their special Tankobon chapters.
A pretty cool add-on that, unfortunately, we didn't really get here in the States. Instead, they just kind of add on to the regular release. A better value, mind you, but at the same time, I think it would have been neat to have. I mean, just look at how many extra pages we have as a result.
But yeah, for next time, we're going to dive into this one-shot, both because this video is already running a little long and I caught a little bit of a cold in between, and also I do want to see how this will hold up when being compared to the upcoming Hirogaru Sky after we get some actual information about it this weekend, and see how this parody would compare with the next actual series based on at least a premise. Still, what's y'all's thoughts about Policure parodies? As I said, we'll probably do a whole separate video for other parodies, so feel free to leave your suggestions in the comments below, whether they be good or bad examples of how to do it.
And until then though, farewell for now my friends, and excuse me.
Association fees, 500 yen.
Do you have change for 20 by chance?